Imagine this. You wake up one morning and your town is gone. No houses, no people, just empty streets. That's what happened to Roanoke Colony, America's first English settlement. It vanished without a trace, and no one knows why. Today, we're going to explore this mystery. But first, let's start at the beginning. Long ago, before the world we know today was built, there were two great powers. One stood by the sea, rich, clever, and dangerous. The other grew strong, on land proud, powerful, and always expanding. These two giants were called Carthage and Rome, and between them, a war would come that changed everything. Let's start with Carthage. Carthage was not just a city, it was a kingdom by the sea. It sat in North Africa, near where Tunisia is today. Its people came from Phoenicia, a land far away across the Mediterranean. They were traders, sailors, and builders. Their ships went everywhere carrying gold, spices, cloth, and weapons. Carthage made money from trade and used that money to grow strong. But Carthage was not alone. Across the sea, in Italy, another power was rising. That power was Rome. Rome was different from Carthage. While Carthage got rich through trade, Rome got strong through war. Every time Rome won a battle, it took new land. With every victory, its army grew stronger. Soon, Rome controlled all of Italy, and it wanted more. So now, imagine these two cities. Carthage, wealthy and wise, with ships that sail the seas. Rome, bold and brave, with soldiers who marched across the land. Both were powerful, both were proud, and both wanted to rule the Western world. At first, they tried to live in peace. They made deals, they signed agreements, they said they would stay out of each other's way. But history shows us one truth: when two great powers stand close, something has to break. And soon, it did. In the next part of our story, we'll learn how a small city called Saguntum became the spark that lit the fire of war. Stay with us. Listen closely. And let's keep walking together through time. Before the Great War between Carthage and Rome truly began, there was a small city called Saguntum. It sat far from Rome, but it had made a promise to protect itself by standing with the Roman Republic. When Hannibal Barca, the rising general of Carthage, turned his eyes toward the city, he knew what he was doing could start something big. But he also believed it was necessary. He saw Saguntum as a threat to Carthaginian power in Spain, and so in the year 219 BC, he made a choice that would change history. He laid siege to the city. Now imagine what it must have been like for the people inside Saguntum. They were not soldiers, they were farmers, traders, families. They had built their homes on a hill, hoping to be safe. But when Hannibal's army arrived, they realized no hill could save them forever. For 8 long months, they held out. They fought back as best they could. They sent messages to Rome begging for help, but Rome did not come. Why? Because Rome was busy. Because some leaders doubted whether going to war over one small city was worth it. Because politics in Rome often moved slower than war, and while they debated, Saguntum fell. When the city finally surrendered, it was burned to the ground. Some say Hannibal gave its people a chance to leave before setting fire to it. Others say he let it burn with them still inside. We may never know the full truth, but we do know this. The fall of Saguntum shocked Rome. It was not just the loss of a city, it was a warning, a message that Carthage was ready for war, and that Hannibal was not afraid to take what he wanted. So Rome answered, not with more debate, not with hesitation, but with a declaration of war. This was not just another fight. This was the beginning of something much bigger. The Second Punic War had begun. In the next section, we'll follow Hannibal as he makes one of the most daring moves in military history. We'll walk with him across the snow-covered peaks of the Alps. We'll feel the cold wind on our faces. We'll hear the trumpeting of elephants, and we'll see how one man defied nature itself to bring war to Rome's own land. So, stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just a tale of battles. It is a tale of choices, of decisions that changed the world. If you were to look at the map of Europe during this time, you might wonder one thing. Why didn't Hannibal just sail his army straight to Rome? After all, Carthage was known for its ships. It ruled the sea. So why risk everything by taking an army through the mountains? The answer is simple. Because war is not always about what is easy. It is about what is unexpected. And Hannibal knew that if he wanted to shock Rome, he had to do something no general had ever done before. He had to lead his soldiers across the Alps. Now imagine this. You are standing at the foot of the Alps. Snow-covered peaks rise above you. The wind bites your skin. The path ahead is narrow and dangerous. And with you are thousands of soldiers, horses, and even elephants. Yes, elephants. These great beasts were part of Hannibal's army, not just for show, but for battle. They could scare enemy horses, trample soldiers, and break enemy lines. But now they had to survive the cold. For days, weeks, months, we don't know exactly how long Hannibal led his army through the mountains. Some parts of the journey were so steep that men slipped and fell into the valleys below. Others froze in their sleep. Food became scarce. Water was icy. Spirits were low, but still, Hannibal pressed on. He did not stop. He did not turn back. He kept moving forward toward Italy, toward Rome, and when he finally reached the other side, Rome was stunned. No one believed it was possible. An army crossing the Alps with elephants in winter, and yet here he was, on Roman soil, ready for war. This march was not just a military move. It was a message, a warning that Hannibal would not fight like other generals. He would not follow the rule. He would use surprise. He would use fear. And he would use whatever it took to win. But crossing the Alps was only the beginning. Now came the real test. Could Hannibal defeat the mighty legions of Rome? Could he take their cities? Could he force them to surrender? Or would the same empire that had grown so strong find a way to survive? In the next section, we'll witness one of the greatest battles in history. We'll stand on the battlefield of Cannae. We'll watch as Hannibal uses a brilliant trick to trap the Roman army. And we'll see how one man outsmarts the strongest military force in the world. So stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about war. It's about courage, about leadership, and about the power of doing the impossible. Imagine this. You are standing on a battlefield in southern Italy. The sun is high. The air is thick with dust and sweat. Thousands of soldiers line up in perfect rows. They are Roman legions, the strongest army in the world at that time. And across from them stands Hannibal Barca. He knows he is outnumbered, but he also knows something else, that today he will teach Rome a lesson it will never forget. This was the Battle of Cannae. It happened in the year 216 BC, and it is still studied by generals today, because what Hannibal did there was pure genius. Let's take a step back. After crossing the Alps, Hannibal had won several battles against Roman forces. But Rome was not done yet. They gathered their largest army, ever more than 80,000 soldiers. Their plan was simple: surround Hannibal's smaller army and crush it with numbers. They believed they could not lose, but they didn't know who they were fighting. Hannibal had a plan. He would let Rome think he was winning, then trap them like a snake closing around its prey. He arranged his front line to look weak. As the Romans pushed forward, they thought they were breaking through, but they were walking straight into a deadly trap. As the battle began, the Roman soldiers charged. They clashed with Hannibal's troops. Swords swung, shields crashed, blood spilled onto the ground, and just as Hannibal planned, the Romans pushed harder. They moved deeper into the Carthaginian lines until suddenly the trap closed on both sides. Hannibal's strongest soldiers struck. They came from behind and surrounded the Roman army. What had looked like an easy victory became a nightmare. The Romans were trapped. There was no room to fight, no way to escape, and so thousands died that day. Some say over 50,000 Roman soldiers fell on the battlefield of Cannae. It was one of the deadliest days in military history, and yet Hannibal did not win the war, because even after this great victory, he still could not take Rome itself. Why? Because Rome refused to give up. Even after losing so many men, they changed their strategy. Instead of fighting Hannibal head-on, they avoided him. They waited. They watched. They let time become their weapon. So while Hannibal stayed undefeated in Italy, Rome found a new leader, a young general named Scipio Africanus. He had a bold idea. Instead of fighting Hannibal in Italy, he would go after Carthage itself. In the next section, we'll follow Hannibal as he becomes a ghost in Italy. We'll see how he moves from town to town, how he avoids being caught, and how, despite being undefeated, he begins to lose the war slowly, because war is not always won by the best general. Sometimes it's won by the one who can last the longest. So stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about battles. It's about choices, about leadership, and about the long road to victory or defeat. Imagine this. You are a general who has just won the greatest battle of your life. You have defeated an army twice your size. You have proven yourself as one of the greatest military minds in history. And yet, victory feels out of reach because you cannot take the final prize. You stand outside the gates of Rome, but you do not march in. Why? Because Rome has changed its plan. It no longer wants to fight you head-on. Instead, it chooses to wait, to watch, to wear you down. This is what happened after the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal had crushed the Roman army, but he could not break Rome itself. So he moved through Italy like a shadow. He took cities, he fought battles, he kept winning. But with each passing year, his grip on victory grew weaker. Let's follow him for a moment. Picture the Italian countryside, rolling hills, olive trees, small villages tucked into the hillsides. Hannibal moves from town to town, always staying ahead of Roman forces. His soldiers are tired. Their boots are worn. Their food is scarce. But they keep going because their leader does not stop. Rome, meanwhile, begins to change. They adopt a new strategy, avoid direct battle with Hannibal. Instead, they attack his allies. They cut off his supply lines. They make it harder and harder for him to survive. Slowly, the tide begins to turn. And then, something happens that changes everything. A young Roman general rises to power. His name is Scipio Africanus. Unlike the others, he is not afraid of Hannibal. In fact, he sees him not as a monster, but as a teacher. He studies Hannibal's tactics. He learns from them. And then he decides to use them against Carthage itself. So while Hannibal remains undefeated in Italy, Rome makes a bold move. Scipio takes an army across the sea. He lands in Africa. And now, for the first time in more than a decade, Hannibal must leave Italy behind. He must race home to save his city. But will he make it in time? Will he be able to stop Scipio before it's too late? Or has the war already passed him by? In the next section, we'll ride with Hannibal as he returns to Africa. We'll feel the heat of the desert wind. We'll hear the thunder of hooves on dry ground. And we'll witness the final battle between two great generals, Hannibal and Scipio. The fate of Carthage hangs in the balance. So, stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about war. It's about time, about choices, and about how even the greatest leaders can find themselves caught in the turning of the world. Picture this. You are Hannibal Barca. You have spent 15 years in enemy land. You have won every battle you fought. You have marched across the Alps. You have defeated Rome's greatest army at Cannae. And yet, you are not the ruler of Italy. You are not the master of Rome. Instead, you are racing home to save your city, because now Carthage is under attack. Across the sea, a Roman army led by Scipio Africanus has landed in Africa. They are not here to negotiate. They are here to end the war. And they are coming for Carthage. When Hannibal finally returns, he finds his city on the edge of destruction. Its walls are strong, but its people are afraid. Its leaders are divided, and time is running out. He knows what must be done. He gathers his soldiers. He prepares for one last battle at a place called Zama. Now, imagine the battlefield. It is dry, hot. Dust rises with every step. The sun beats down like fire, and across from each other stand two great generals, Hannibal and Scipio, teacher and student. legend and challenger. But something is different this time. Scipio has studied Hannibal's tactics. He knows how he wins, and now he uses those same tricks against him. The trap that once worked so well fails. The battle begins. Elephants charge. Swords clash. Men scream. And for the first time in his life, Hannibal is beaten. Carthage surrenders. Rome sets harsh terms. No more standing army. No more foreign wars. Only survival and silence. So ends the Second Punic War, and with it ends the age of Hannibal. But his story does not end here, because even after losing everything, his name lives on. In the next section, we'll follow Hannibal as he becomes a fugitive. We'll see how he moves from court to court, seeking allies, how Rome hunts him for years, and how, in the end, he chooses death over capture. So stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about war. It's about legacy, about memory, and about how even the greatest can fall, but still be remembered. After the battle at Zama, Hannibal was no longer a conqueror. He was a fugitive. Carthage had surrendered. Rome had won. And now, there was a price on his head. For years, Hannibal moved from place to place, seeking shelter in foreign courts. He found refuge in the east, with kings who still respected him, in Greece, in Syria, in Asia Minor, but wherever he went, Rome followed. They sent messengers. They made demands. They offered rewards, because they knew something that few others did, that even a defeated general could be dangerous, especially one as brilliant as Hannibal. Imagine what it must have been like for him, once hailed as a hero, now hunted like an outlaw. He had led armies across mountains. He had stood on the edge of victory. And now he wandered from court to court, always looking over his shoulder, always waiting for the knock on the door. One day, that knock came. He was hiding in a small kingdom called Bithynia. He thought he was safe, but Rome had finally caught up. Soldiers were coming to take him back, not to fight, but to face judgment, to be put on display, to be humiliated, to be silenced. So Hannibal made a choice, a final choice. He drank poison, and with that single act, one of history's greatest minds was gone, forever lost to time. But his name lived on. Generals studied his battles. Emperors whispered his name in awe. Historians wrote about him for centuries. Even Rome, his greatest enemy, came to respect him, because they understood something we still understand today, that greatness is not measured by whether you win. It is measured by how deeply you leave your mark. In the next section, we'll explore Hannibal's legacy. We'll see how his tactics shaped generals like Napoleon and Patton, how his story inspired books, movies, and games, and why, even after more than 2,000 years, his name still echoes through history. So stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about war. It's about memory, about leadership, and about the power of a single life to change the world. What makes a great general? Is it the number of battles he wins? The lands he conquers? The fear he puts in his enemies' hearts? Or is it something deeper? Something that lasts long after the dust of war has settled? Hannibal Barca was never defeated in battle. He crossed the Alps with elephants. He crushed Rome's largest army at Cannae, and for 15 years he lived like a ghost in enemy land, undefeated, unbroken, unstoppable, and yet he lost the war. So why do we still remember him today? Why do generals study his tactics? Why do historians write books about him? Why do soldiers whisper his name before battle? Because Hannibal teaches us something powerful, that winning every fight doesn't always mean winning the war, that brilliance on the battlefield isn't enough without support from home, that even the greatest minds can be worn down by time, politics, and the slow turning of fate. But more than that, he teaches us what it means to fight for something you believe in, to stand against impossible odds, to challenge the world as it is, and try to shape it into what you believe it could be. Generals like Napoleon studied his campaigns. Military leaders like Patton saw him as a model. Even today, in war colleges around the world, his name is spoken with respect. His strategies are taught like sacred texts. But beyond the battlefield, there is another side to Hannibal, a man who loved his city, who believed in its future, who gave everything to protect it. And when all was lost, he chose death over dishonor. Some say he was the greatest general who ever lived. Others say he was just unlucky. But no one can deny this truth. Hannibal left a mark on history that will never fade. In the next section, we'll look at the big question. We'll imagine a different world. One where Hannibal won, where Carthage ruled Europe, where Rome never rose to power, and where history took a completely different path. Imagine a different world, one where Rome never ruled Europe, one where Carthage stood tall for centuries, where trade ships ruled the seas instead of legions, where generals studied Hannibal's victories like we now study Napoleon's, a world where history took a completely different path. So, what if Hannibal had won? Let's rewind. After Cannae, Rome was broken. Thousands of soldiers lay dead on the battlefield. The Senate was in panic. There were whispers of surrender, and for a moment it looked like the war might be over. But Rome did not fall. Instead, it changed. It adapted. It waited. But what if Rome had fallen? What if Hannibal had marched straight to the city and taken it? What would Europe have looked like without Roman roads, laws, language, and culture? In this alternate version of history, Carthage becomes the dominant power. Its navy rules the Mediterranean. Its merchants build trade routes across Africa, Europe, and beyond. Instead of Latin, children learn Punic in school. Instead of Roman law, they follow Carthaginian codes. Instead of Roman gods, they worship Baal and Tanit. Would there have been an empire like Rome? Maybe, but it would have been different. Less about conquest, more about commerce. Carthage was a city of traders, not conquerors. It built wealth through the sea, not through swords. But then again, could Carthage have held together an empire as large as Rome's, or would it have fractured into smaller kingdoms always fighting among themselves? Now let's go even further. What if Carthage had survived long enough to influence the rise of Christianity? Would Jesus have been born under Carthaginian rule instead of Roman? Would his message have spread the same way? Would Paul have traveled by Carthaginian ship instead of Roman road? And what about science, philosophy, and art? Would Greek ideas have reached the West through Carthage instead of Rome? Would thinkers like Aristotle and Plato have been translated into Punic instead of Latin? Then imagine the modern world. No Latin roots in English. No Roman legal systems shaping governments. No Roman architecture inspiring cities from Washington, D.C. to Moscow. Just a world shaped by Carthage, by its values, its leaders, and its legacy. Of course, this is all speculation. We can never know for sure. But one thing is certain. Hannibal came closer than anyone to changing the course of history. He nearly broke Rome. He nearly reshaped the world. And even though he lost, his name still echoes through time. In the final section of our documentary, we reflect on what this war teaches us about leadership, about resilience, and about how sometimes the greatest minds leave behind more questions than answers. So, stay with us. Let the story carry you forward. And remember, this is not just about war. It's about choices, about dreams, and about how one man's life can change the world forever. As we come to the end of our journey, let's pause for a moment. We followed Hannibal across mountains. We've stood on battlefields where thousands fell in a single day. We've seen the rise and fall of empires. And now, as the dust settles, we ask ourselves one final question. What did it all mean? History is not just about who won or lost. It is about what we learn, about how we grow, about how the choices of one man can shape the fate of nation. So what can we learn from Hannibal? That brilliance alone is not enough. That even the greatest general needs more than skill. He needs support, resources, and time. That war is not just fought with swords and shields, but also with politics, patience, and power. And what can we learn from Rome? That sometimes survival is the greatest victory. That strength is not always in winning battles, but in lasting longer than your enemy. That endurance can be stronger than genius. These lessons still echo today in modern wars, in business, in leadership, in life itself. Think of the generals who studied Hannibal, Napoleon, Patton, Sun Tzu. They saw in him not just a warrior, but a teacher, a man who showed that cleverness can defeat brute force, that surprise can beat numbers, that strategy can change everything. And yet, he still lost, not because he was weak, not because he was wrong, but because history had other plans. So as we close this chapter, let us remember Hannibal not just as a general, but as a symbol of courage, of ambition, of the price of greatness. And let us remember Rome not just as a winner, but as a lesson that sometimes the best way to win is to survive long enough to see your enemy fade away. So thank you for walking with us through time, for listening to the story of two great powers, for hearing the name of Hannibal Barca once more, and for remembering the war that shook an empire. Now rest. Let the music carry you forward. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of elephants crossing the Alps tonight.